all you happy people. How you doing? It's February 2026. Do you know how bizarre that is? It's 2026. Every once in a while, somebody will talk about something from the 80s or the 90s, and that feels like that was only 10 years ago. Now it's like 30, 40 years ago. That's bizarre. I mean, that really is bizarre, isn't it? Time has just flown by. It's kind of crazy. I look at the calendar. It's like, how did we get here? I mean, I'll be honest. I'm surprised because I didn't think I was going to live past the age of 41. Now, that didn't seem weird, but I had a lot of things in my life that pointed at the number 41. So I, of course, as a young man, went, oh, that must be the day I die. But yeah, no, still here. So, kind of interesting. Hey, Ed, how you doing? All right, so lots to talk about tonight. We're going to do a deep dive into Lobo. We're going to get to that. We're going to talk about Wonder Man. We're going to maybe rant a little bit, maybe. But I just saw this news. I thought it was kind of interesting. I always like to check the trades, or what's considered the trades, like Deadline, Hollywood Reporter, stuff like that, before I go live. That way I know I have the absolute most recent news. And even though it's a Sunday, it's, still good to check. Well, it turns out we have a new EGOT winner. And if you're not familiar with the EGOTs, an EGOT is somebody who has won an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony Award. That's pretty crazy. That means that they've won in the category of music, film, television, and theater. And the list of EGOTs is not the only thing that gets even thinner is when you add a Peabody Award. Hey, Thomas, good to see you. When you get to a PGOT, they call it, when you add a Peabody Award, and that's even fewer people. Like Mel Brooks is one of the people who I believe he won a PGOT because he has all those awards. Well, tonight, a new EGOT winner. Someone just picked up a Grammy. He already had an Emmy and an Oscar and a Tony. Steven Spielberg. Steven Spielberg has now become an EGOT winner. He picked up a Grammy for his documentary or special about the music of John Williams. And because it was a documentary about music, Thomas, we are definitely going to talk about Lobo. I'm all set for that. So we're going to talk about Lobo. We're going to talk about Wonder Man. But I always try to cover a little bit of other stuff just to let people get here, because I'm not popular enough that people sit there and wait online to, at least not many people. Maybe some do. I don't know. So we're getting there, though. But yeah, so Steven Spielberg won an Emmy tonight. He's now an EGOT winner. But, I forgot to turn this thing on, which is kind of cool. You guys like that? Can you see that? Where it shows all the, or is that just me? I see the chat there. I don't know. I never thought about it. Is that just me? Do you guys see chat right there? On the screen itself, like on my left shoulder? All right. So, one of the things I wanted to rant about, um, and I do this a lot because, thank you, Ed, um, because it drives me absolutely insane. Now, I'm somebody who spends a lot of time doing videos and stuff about the entertainment industry and specifically about comic book movies, pop culture movies, stuff like that. So, my room to talk is limited, but there are those out there that do this and they're all about clicks. I'm not monetized. I don't make any money for doing this. I'm here because I love this stuff. I love chatting with you guys. Also, it gives me a chance to tell you about what I'm up to and the new books and stuff. So if I can build a rapport with you guys that way, great. But it's fun. It's fun to do the show. It's fun to talk comics. I'm basically an introvert. So getting on here, this is my social interaction a lot of weeks. Now, what I saw today, just it's so frustrating. If you guys follow James Gunn on social media, every once in a while he'll come out and he'll clear things up. You know, so he's like, "Oh, Wonder Woman's going to be in Man of Tomorrow. Wonder Woman's going to be in Man of Tomorrow. They're casting a female lead. It's going to be Wonder Woman. It's going to be Wonder Woman." And then James Gunn comes out a week or so later and goes, "Wonder Woman's not going to be a Man of Tomorrow. It's a lie. It's not true. We're not doing that." And of course, all the people who said it came back and said, "Oh, well, they changed it. They're going to use a different character. They've decided to use Maxima instead." It's like, okay. Not just saying that you were wrong. Or the other thing is, well, we got it from these guys. Those guys over there told us. So we heard it from moviepoopshoot.com. There's a reference that this is going to happen. And, Tatiana Maslany got fired from Marvel and she's never going to be She-Hulk again. And somebody else hears that and they go, "Oh, well, yeah, well, we hear Mary Elizabeth Winstead's going to be the new She-Hulk." "Oh, yeah. And then somebody else over here goes, "Yeah, we heard that." And Marvel's going to greenlight a second season of She-Hulk. "Oh, yeah. And they think that the first season would have been better had they cast Winstead in the first place." That's legitimate conversation going on online right now. But when you go back to the start of this whole thing, you find out that Tatiana Maslany has not been fired as She-Hulk. It's because people don't like her politics, so they make up stories. It's just like the story about how Mark Ruffalo has been fired. He hasn't. If there's going to be a Hulk, if Bruce Banner is going to show up, it's going to be Mark Ruffalo. If Jennifer Walters shows up, it's going to be Tatiana Maslany. There's been no announcement. There's been no confirmation. And Tatiana Maslany actually came out and said what a BS that is. So where does this come from? Well, partly it's because you don't click on things if it's not somewhat controversial, somewhat shocking. So I clicked on this one guy's link, and the title was "No Batman in the DCU." It's like, no Batman in the DCU? Well, that doesn't seem right because James Gunn has said they're going to have a Batman. They're going to be Batman Brave and the Bold. We've heard who the writer's supposed to be, even though it's not been announced, but everybody came out and said she's a horrible writer because of some things she wrote in the past. And Gunn came out and defended her, Christina Hudson, but he never confirmed that she's writing Batman Brave and the Bold. But the guy's headline, "No Batman in the DCU." no Batman in the MCU, that would be a legitimate headline. In the DCU, no. So you go in and you listen to this guy, and he tells you that what James Gunn has said, he said, well, what the news is that Robert Pattinson will not be Batman in the DCU. Now, that video was posted today. We have known that for a very long time. Gunn has said that before. But recently, someone asked him again to verify, and he said no. Robert Pattinson is not going to be Batman in the DCU. So when this guy tells us this is the news, and he says, what is the source of this? Well, it's James Gunn. James Gunn has said declaratively, Robert Pattinson will not be Batman in the DCU. And had he ended it right there, it would have been, well, you had a false, a faked up headline, but you're saying the truth. And the literal next words out of his mouth were, for now. For now. The fact that Gunn has said very clearly multiple times, Pattinson's not going to be Batman in the DCU. Not going to happen. And this guy still comes back. He goes, yes, Pattinson's not going to be Batman in the DCU for now. Why? Why? There's enough news. There's enough news that Deadline, Hollywood Reporter, Variety are all out there thriving as websites. Okay, thriving maybe, but they're popular websites. You could just tell those kind of stories. You don't need to make things up for clicks. Be good. Don't just be sensational. So, like I said, that always frustrates me. But, all right. So we got a coin flip here. Should we do Lobo or Wonder Man first? What do you guys think? Wonder Man's interesting, but Lobo's interesting too. Wasn't there somebody else who wanted the Lobo interview? Lobo deep dive? A young lady who joined us last time. Do we know if she's in the chat? So we'll take a second, see if that pops up. Otherwise, yeah, we'll go ahead and start on Lobo. So. All right. That's it, Catherine. Somebody wake her up. It's Lobo time. Look, I've even got visuals. We've got visuals. I got 3 visuals because we need them. But all right, let's. We're going to go ahead and get started on Lobo. So this is a very interesting character, and he's a very strange character because when you look at him, there's such a fan base for Lobo, but he hasn't been in that many books. I mean, he's not like on the level. I mean, nope, Catherine, we're just getting started. I was kind of stalling a little to make sure everybody got here. So Lobo. All right. So the first thing you guys got to know about Lobo is that, like a certain character over at Marvel named Deadpool, and there's a lot of similarities in this because in a lot of ways, Lobo is DC's Deadpool. Lobo was created for something, but it wasn't until another creative team came in and kind of made him who he is. And I say that about Deadpool because, yes, Rob Liefeld and Fabian Nicieza created Deadpool. But at that point, he was basically Deathstroke the Terminator with Spider-Man's sense of humor. He was just a sarcastic loudmouth. There really wasn't that depth, that fourth wall breaking, all of that stuff to the character. That didn't come until he got his own series and was being written by Joe Kelly and drawn by Walter McDaniel. So, yes, Rob Liefeld and Fabian Nicieza created Deadpool, but the Deadpool that we all fell in love with and the Deadpool that Ryan Reynolds brings to life, that is much more a product of the creators that came along later. And you could say that about just about any character too. You know, I mean, Superman, he didn't fly when Siegel and Schuster created him. There's a reason they say leap tall buildings in single bound. That's all he could do. You know, Perry White, Jimmy Olsen, those were all products of the radio program. You know, there was the things that make up the characters we love today are based on all the work that came along. Lobo is an extreme version of that because, like I said, this is the Lobo we all know. Give me 1 second. I got the hiccups. Badass looking guy. Looks like a cross between Rob Zombie and Gene Simmons on steroids. But that's not how he first looked. This badass space biker thing was not his first appearance. What he looked like in his first appearance is very different. That's not even a very good image of it. I'm sorry. That was the best one I could find. He wore a purple and orange bodysuit. He had purple hair. And yes, he was a space bounty hunter. But he was not the guy we see nowadays. Hey, Pete, how you doing? Welcome to the show. Um, so Lobo, let me get you some details on him. Now, that appearance was in 1983 in the Omega Man, number 3, Omega Men, excuse me, created by Roger Slipher and Keith Giffen. But he was introduced as just a minor villain. He didn't have any of the over-the-top things that kind of made the character stand out. He just, like I said, he looked kind of like a court jester. It wasn't until later when Simon Bisley and Keith Giffen and Alan Grant did a miniseries. There was a Lobo miniseries in 1990 and 1991. And these 4 issues basically made Lobo the ultra-violent, profane, immortal, and over-the-top character that people have fallen in love with. And especially Simon Bisley's artwork. That is what this is. That is Simon Bisley's design. That is the character that everybody has fallen in love with. So from 1983 to 1990, he was used in a handful of things. He showed up in Justice League at one point, used just, stuff like that. He was just a silly side character, a villain of the week type character. But then this miniseries came along. And from there, he really picked up. Um, and again, he's kind of, like I said, Deadpool, DC's Deadpool. Because, well, the interesting thing is the origin that he had in from 83 to 90 was a different planet. He was kind of the outcast. He wasn't all that special. It wasn't until post crisis that he got all this upgrade and stuff. He basically became what even his race changed. He became known as the Caesarian, which I assume is a play on cesarean section. It's spelled CZ like a czar. Um, but his story is, in a lot of ways, he's similar to Martian Manhunter and Superman, is he's the last of his race. But unlike Martian Manhunter, who's the last green Martian after all the white Martians wiped him out, or Superman being the last Kryptonian after their planet got destroyed, and he doesn't seem to be the last Kryptonian, does he really? Because they're popping up all over the place. You got Zod, you got Kara. I mean, there's Krypton. Argo City is still. I mean, it's yeah. You can't swing a dead cat without hitting a Kryptonian nowadays in the DC universe. But Lobo is the last Caesarian. But that's because he killed all the other ones. He decided, as what he considered a science experiment, to release angry flying scorpions on the planet. And it turns out he is the only one that had the ability to this healing factor. So, yeah. You guys are welcome here completely. So I have no problem with that, cat. Come on in. Um, so Lobo kills this planet. He gave himself an A, by the way, on his science project. He's a bounty hunter, and there is some weird stuff to his backstory. The reason he's a bounty hunter is because he needs to feed his pet dolphins. He has a pack of space dolphins, or I believe a pod. Dolphins are a pod. He has a pod of space dolphins that sometimes show up, sometimes they don't. But he takes jobs to be able to afford food for the dolphins. He's also got a bulldog. I don't remember if he's a space bulldog or just a regular bulldog, but he does, and he's got that big Harley motorcycle that travels through space. But that's basically Lobo. There's not a lot of comics with him in it. Some of the notable storylines, there's one called Lobo's Back. There's Lobo's Blazing Chain of Love. There's the Lobo Paramilitary Christmas Special. And yes, he kills Santa Claus. There's Lobo Un-American Gladiators, Lobo Infanticide. This one was interesting. They had Lobo versus the Mask from Dark Horse Comics. And of course, Lobo the Last Caesarian, which is his retelling of the origin after post-crisis. Now, and again, he's absurd violence. He's constantly traveling through space and going to different planets and stuff. He's got his own bizarre code of honor. He's supposed to have like over 200 illegitimate children all around the galaxy. And he can't die or stay dead. He'll always regenerate to the point where, like, if you cut him in half, there may be two of them after. They never say what happens to the two of them after the story, but there's always two. Now, so you've got this fun character that everybody likes. And DC decided in 2011, let's change him. Let's redefine the character. Let's make him more modern because, the 70s biker look, that's outdated. We don't need that, right? So they went out and they created this version. skinny, kind of emo-ish. This is the Twilight version of Lobo compared to Simon Bisley's version is the 30 Days of Night version. This is horrible. This series ran 13 episodes and did bad. Hey, Triple B. So, how did they explain it? When they first brought the character in, he tried to tell people that he was the real Lobo and that the one that had been running around on the bike and all that was a fake Lobo, and he killed the fake Lobo. And then after that, after the 13 episodes went horribly well and DC did Rebirth, they went, we don't know anything about Twilight Lobo. We're just going to go back to Biker Lobo. And that's what they did. They went back to Biker Lobo. And that's who we have now. And, you know, Jason Momoa, when he got the part of Aquaman, thought he was getting cast as Lobo. Because that's the character he always wanted. That's the character he thinks he looked like. And there was a whole thing of him going, wait, what, Aquaman? What? You know, Ed asks, if he's not in that many books with him, how did he get so much pop from fans about him being in the movie? Just because Momoa fans? No. See, that's the funny thing, is that even though he hasn't really been in that many books, and, you know, most of his popular series are miniseries, he is extremely popular. People love the character. He's got that look that people like. And I'm trying to think of other characters like that. Like Deadpool. Deadpool had the look and the attitude that people caught on to, and then eventually it took off. There wasn't this cry for him. It's just there was this groundswell. So, yeah, that's the basics of Lobo. Now, he's been in other things besides the comics. He has been in animation. He's been voiced by a few different people, most notably Brad Garrett from Everybody Loves Raymond, the brother. Yeah, he did the voice of Lobo in a cartoon. John DiMaggio did. Joe DiMaggio is the baseball player. That's very different. John DiMaggio, who's done a lot of voice acting. David Sebulva also did it. But live action, he's appeared in live action once before. And I forgot to mention this last week when we first started talking about it, because this was on a show that I forget about sometimes, but I actually liked when it was on. And that was Krypton, that short-lived sci-fi series that went and did the story of Superman's grandfather, Seg-El. There was some really good stuff that came out of it, though. There was Adam Strange was a character. Sean Sipos was Adam Strange, and I thought he was really good in that. Wallace Day was in it. Trying to think of the gentleman's name. He played Walter on Arrow. He played Zod. They had a version of Doomsday. They had all these different characters that you would think, wait, how are they showing up in the past? Well, that was part of the story. Brainiac was in it. Great version of Brainiac. But they also had a version of Lobo. And it was probably the truest to comic version of anything in the show. They did a remarkable job. Emmett Scanlon played Lobo, and his regeneration factor, his attitude, all of that was part of the show. So if you have access to Krypton, Season 2, Lobo, if you have access to, I think it's HBO Max, and they've got the Man of Tomorrow animated movie, Superman Man of Tomorrow, that's a great Lobo story. But like I said, there's not a lot of Lobo stories, and most of them are A little nonsensical in the same way Deadpool is, where you breaking the fourth wall and all that. It's kind of hard to gel that with a universe that has, Wolverine and Batman or Captain America to the way Deadpool is. Well, it's the same thing with Lobo. Sometimes his stuff is so over the top and so outlandishly violent that it's hard to imagine that lives in the same world as Wonder Woman. They do. They absolutely do. So, but he's a pretty interesting character. And it's going to be interesting to see what they do with him. Do they tone him down a little bit to make him fit into the world? Or do they let him be Lobo and then just kind of see how it blends? I don't think we'll get the space dolphins in the movie, but I will probably get the code of honor. The code of honor is weird. It's the type of thing where he'll get paid to do something, he'll do it, and then afterwards he'll realize that the people that paid him are assholes. So he did his job, he's paid, he'll then flip on them. That's how he did it in the Omega Men, is that he was hired to capture the Omega Men, captured them, took them in, and the people that wanted them were not good people. So once he did his job and he got paid and the contract was done, he sided with the Omega Men and helped them break out. So I don't think you can call him an anti-hero. He's just kind of in it for himself. He's a bounty hunter. He might be a good guy. He might be a bad guy. You really don't know. So, anybody have any questions about Lobo? Like I said, there's not a lot to him, but he's pure attitude. He was part of the Legion group, not Legion superheroes, but there was a team called Legion, Legion with dots, and then eventually Rebels. There were these things that the DC did in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s. He was part of that. He has fought Superman to a standstill. Yeah, he's just kind of a meta commentary on violent anti-heroes. Rob Liefeld has a version of him when Rob went over to make Image, and most of his characters seem to be copies of Marvel characters that he had worked on or whatever. Well, there's a character called Blood Wolf that's pretty much Lobo. Except for instead of riding a motorcycle, he's riding a giant gun. Yeah. You ever read Blood Wolf? He's got this insanely large gun he fires, then he puts it down and climbs on top of it and he rides off on it. Is the chat locked up? Nothing I'm typing is showing up. Oh, I saw that. I see the last few comments. You talking to Triple B. Thomas says, is this the Triple B Eddie declared the puppy, dedicated the puppy video to? That stuff's been posted. All right. Well, like I said, if you guys have any other questions about Lobo, feel free to ask. If not, we will move on to Wonder Man. Have any of you seen Wonder Man? Wonder Man was interesting because I think Marvel expected it to do horribly. And I think that's why it's doing well. I think people's expectations for Marvel are set at such a high level for a long time that they just started expecting more than what Marvel could deliver. And then it got to a point where they just assumed that everything Marvel was doing was going to be bad. Marvel would come out and say, we did this great new movie. And People would go, well, I'll be the judge of that. No, it's not. Have you seen it yet? No, not yet, but we'll soon. So we're kind of swinging that around where Marvel has put a few things out kind of quietly. Echo, that Steelheart, is it Steelheart? No, Ironheart, and then now Wonder Man. And Wonder Man, they just kind of dropped it out there. They went, hey, here's 8 episodes. This was supposed to come out a while ago. It's been done for a while. It was done during the writer's strike. So that was a while ago. Let's see. So do you think Lobo is going to be this villain in Supergirl? No. I think he will be used against her at one point, and I think that he may swing around and work with her. See, this is interesting. The Supergirl movie, if it follows Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, is about Supergirl helping this young girl named Ruthie get revenge against the man that killed her father. And that is Krem of the Yellow Hills. And they chase they basically have to chase him across the galaxy to catch him. And at one point, he sends bounty hunters against her, stuff like that. And I think that's the role that Lobo will play. Possibly. The other thing is that when Tom King originally pitched the idea of Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, he pitched it as a Lobo Supergirl team-up story. Lobo was going to be in it through the whole thing. But the editor said, we've got other plans for Lobo. So what we're going to do, if you want to do this, just make it a Supergirl story. And that's what ended up happening. So Lobo was in it, got taken out. So he could be filling the role of a mercenary in the story, or they could be trying to shift it back to what Tom King's original idea was, because they're not going to do a pure 100% adaptation. And this, of course, was a 12-issue series that took her to all different kinds of planets, all different kinds of situations. It was almost like, it almost became like The Fugitive. Well, actually, what they liken it to is, what the hell is it called? It's the John Wayne Western that was then remade recently with I am just blanking on everything right now. Kurt Russell? No. Jeff Bridges. Jeff Bridges in the role that John Wayne had played, and the little girl is played by the girl that's now Hawkeye. Wow. But yeah, that's what the story likens to. You know what? That's big enough information. I need to check that real quick. Jeff Bridges. True Grit. There we go. So this is kind of the DC version of True Grit. Yeah, that is actually a real. I mean, even Tom King has likened it to that. Haley Steinfeld is the girl that I was trying to think of the name. I am so bad at that. True Grit. Yeah, thanks. I'm only halfway through Woman of Tomorrow, trade paperback right now by Tom King, and loving it. Yeah, it is a good story. Bilquis Evely's artwork is it's very good art. It's also very stylized art. and it's art that I kind of have to warm up to. So I didn't really like it the first time I read it, but I've gotten it again. It's now available in the DC Compact Comics trades, and I've reread it and like it a lot better now. There's certain artists that I will agree are super talented, but they don't necessarily click for the art I like. And Bill Quizavely is one of them. Um, Frank Quietly is another one. Everybody loves All Star Superman. It's not that high on my list, and I think part of it is because I'm not a fan of Frank Quietly's artwork. I will agree that he is super talented, but it's not it's not pleasing to me. How's that? So, yeah. Lobo, I think he will most likely just play a smaller part. But if they do try to go back to whatever Tom King's original idea was, that could be interesting too. So, all right. Now, if you guys have any other questions on it, go ahead and throw them in the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to keep going with Wonder Man. If you guys haven't seen it, this show is way better than it should have been. This should have been a show that, let me give a little setup here. I'm old. I started reading comics in 1975 at the age of 5. So you can tell how old I am. Do the math. There will be a quiz later. So I grew up in an era of comics that nobody wrote for the trade. Writers just came in and tried to tell a good story for however many issues they were told to. A lot of times, one. Miniseries didn't start until the 80s. The idea of doing a specific arc of 4-6 issues, that had never been done before. Nobody was doing miniseries. So that was new. One of the first miniseries, or one of the early miniseries, was a Wonder Man miniseries. And it focused on him going out to Hollywood. So the reason I bring that up is that nowadays, writers are all writing for the big story. What's the big twist? What's the big change? They sit down, they try to figure out, how can I put my stamp on this character? And that's a newer thing. That's not how writers used to approach it. Writers used to approach it is, how can I tell the best story possible in these pages? So you would get these good short stories, 1 issue, 2 issues, 4 issues, that existed just to be a story. They didn't have to feed an overarching narrative, and they didn't have to rock the character in some way that's going to leave your name tied to him forever. And that's what I see nowadays. A lot of these writers, they come in and it's, let's give Batman a child. Let's give Batman a brother. Let's make Batman's parents evil. Let's, how about just give me a good Batman story? Yes, Hush gave him something he'd never had before. A friend when he was a kid. It doesn't change anything else. It doesn't change how we think about the Waynes. It doesn't change his family lineage. It just means that before his parents died, this young kid had another young kid he played with. That makes sense. Doesn't change the character, but it adds depth. But suddenly there's another brother. Suddenly, all these other changes. So to me, Wonder Man, the movie or the series, is like the old miniseries. It is a story about Simon Williams. It is telling you a story that isn't trying to feed the overall narrative of Marvel Comics. It's not pushing towards Doomsday and Secret Wars. It's not a secret trailer, basically, for the next big movie, the next big Avengers movie. So, it's just a story. It doesn't need to tie into everything, but it does at the same time. They take a character, Trevor Slattery, who was controversial because of how he was debuted in the Iron Man 3, how he was supposed to be the Mandarin. He was a bait and switch character, and everybody hated that. Oh my God, that's not the Mandarin. How do you do that to the Mandarin? Da, da, da. That's just a cover for Extremis. You've wasted that amazing character. Did they? Looking back now, did they waste the Mandarin? Well, they wasted the name because that's a horribly offensive name. But they took that character, then they did a one-shot, which made people go, oh, that's kind of interesting. Where did he end up going? And then he shows up in Shang-Chi, where we meet the real Mandarin, who's Wenwu. We get that character from the Iron Man with the 10 rings. Now they're bracelets instead of rings on the fingers. But, it's Marvel's just kind of shifting things around, making some changes, but they're working. And you come out of Shang-Chi and you're like, kind of like Trevor Slattery. He and his little friend Morris. That's cool. So when the guy who directed Shang-Chi had a chance to make a Wonder Man movie about Hollywood, and he went, didn't we just have an actor in my last project played by a knighted gentleman? Let's see if we can get Sir Ben Kingsley on the phone. Oh, you're willing to come back and do more. Terrific. So they tell this little story about chasing dreams, sometimes realizing that what you think you need isn't, about friendship, sacrifice, and Hollywood. That's it. That's the story. It is this amazing relationship between Simon Williams and Trevor Slattery and their growth from first meeting to the end of the show. It does have setup. You can see that damage control is going to be a problem. You can see a lot of other things in it. But the basis of this movie or this series is this relationship between the two of them. And you know what? They're two flawed individuals. Neither one of them are all that special, all that spectacular. And by the end of it, you like them for who they are with each other. Simon is not the nicest guy. He's reserved, a bit self-centered. They even call that out in the thing. But when he's with Trevor, he's better. Trevor has got his own issues. He's a bit self-centered. But both of them find someone that they're willing to sacrifice for, a friend. And that's what this story is about. And it's a good story. And that's what a lot of people are coming out of it like. We thought that a lot of people thought that since Marvel just dropped all 8 episodes at once, that it wasn't good, that they were just kind of, don't look over here. Oh, that's a Marvel movie show. Okay, we're going to go. But it turns out this is a really good show. It is closer to WandaVision and Loki in the sense that it's just a strong story from beginning to end. Yeah, it ends a little bit on a cliffhanger. If you haven't seen it, you'll find out. It's got some great cameos. There's some cameos that's like, I can't believe that person's in there. And there's some actors playing themselves. And it's interesting. But it's good. And unlike a lot of the shows where you watch the videos that people do about them, they're like, man, that was just short. That just felt nothing. Da-da. because you get all 8 episodes, you finish an episode and you're like, well, that felt, nope, nope, the next one's starting. So you're not spending all that time focused on how short the episodes are because they're half-hour episodes. They're about, without credits or anything, they're about a half hour. And that's what they said they were going to be. They said it was 8 half-hour episodes, like She-Hulk was. These are supposed to be more comedy. And it also says it's a Marvel spotlight, like Werewolf by Night. So it's not supposed to be something you have to watch for continuity. It's its own little thing. It's great. I absolutely loved it. The relationship between Trevor and Simon is wonderful. The way they look into Hollywood is a lot of fun. But it's not from a standpoint of, look how great Hollywood is. It's, look, Hollywood can be a pain in the ass. This is not the, oh my God, I'm a big star. It's, oh my God, I'm barely making it. Oh my God, my girlfriend just walked out on me. Oh my God, nobody gets me. Nobody understands me. I'm doing this because it's what it feels I need to do. So it's yes, there are super powered things in it. It's not a superhero show. And then there's one episode. In a show that's already different than anything else from Marvel, there is one episode, it's the 4th episode, which tells a completely different story. But the events of that story affects the series. So it needs to be told. But to make sure you know that this isn't now, this is a few years ago, they do it in black and white. Sorry, Ed, there is a black and white episode. Forgot about that. But it, like I said, it's a standalone episode. It's on Disney Plus. It's a standalone episode, so you can watch everything else without watching that one episode, Ed. But anyway, the interesting thing is that it introduces a character. The standalone episode introduces a character, a minor character. Yeah, I'll be happy to, Ed. A minor character from the Great Lakes Avengers. You guys know the Great Lakes Avengers? This was back in when there was a West Coast Avengers and an East Coast Avengers, or the Avengers and West Coast Avengers. John Byrne decided to have some fun. And it's like, well, what if it was another Avengers team of less than thrilling heroes or minor heroes who are trying to just work somewhere else in the country? And he thought, well, because it's West Coast, East Coast, what if we did Great Lakes? They're in the Chicago area. And that's what they did. And these were some pretty lame characters. And not lame as in, it's just their powers weren't all that special. There was Mr. Immortal, who just can't die. Squirrel Girl came later. She was part of it, though. And Hawkeye and Mockingbird ended up taking them on to train him. But the original 5 were Mr. Immortal, who just couldn't die, didn't have any other powers, just would always come back to life. Flatman, who literally was just flat. Super thin, like Reed Richards completely stretched out. Dinosaur, who was a pterodactyl woman. Big Bertha was a girl that could change her mass and become huge, like just really, really big. But, that was pretty much her power. Not tall, but massive. And then there was also Doorman. And Doorman had the weird ability that you could pass through him like a door. So if he put his back against a wall and you went into his chest, you would come out the other side of the wall. Hey, Mr. Nope. So, Doorman. Well, Marvel has slowly been introducing these characters into the MCU. In She-Hulk, there was an episode where this guy is Craig Hollis, and he has been married a lot and never been divorced. And the reason he's never been divorced is because he dies to get out of his marriages. That's because he's Mr. Immortal. He'll leap out of a plane and hit the ground and be dead and then get up and walk away. And technically, he's no longer married in his mind. And that's a lawsuit. So it's a lawsuit thing. And it's a minor character actor, a comedian, Dave Pasquale, I think his name is. He was also in the Book of Boba Fett series as the mayor's assistant. The Twi'lek. So they introduced Mr. Immortal in She-Hulk. Well, they introduced Doorman in Wonder Man. And what happens becomes a major part, but he's a minor character, you know? He's literally a doorman who ends up with superpowers, and they change how he gets his powers a bit, tie him closer into like Cloak and Dagger than, I think in the comics they're all mutants. So they twist that up a bit. But overall, he's a neat little character. It's a fun episode. And we now have 2 parts of the Great Lakes Avengers. Now, there was going to be a series based on the New Warriors on, I think it was not Hulu, ABC Family or something. And they had Squirrel Girl in it. But they were going to take some other characters from the Great Lakes Avengers and put them in the show too. Mr. Immortal, I think, was one of them. So they had plans for that, but that ended up being canceled or dropped. But here they are. So there's another reason to watch. If you're a Great Lakes Avengers fan, your second Great Lakes Avenger shows up in Wonder Man. But again, it's a fun series. It ties into Iron Man. It ties into Shang-Chi. It might tie into the X-Men going forward or something like that. But again, none of that is forefront. It doesn't feel like it's a setup for any of that. It feels like they're telling a specific story. And it's different than everything else in Marvel. It's not necessarily a superhero story. You know, there's not battles between good and evil and stuff like that. So if you're looking for something different, fun, Wonder Man's you go to. So, all right, guys. I'm thinking that's going to be it for tonight. I'm sorry you got here late, Mr. Nope, but this will be up on YouTube if you want to watch, or on Facebook if you want to watch it later. We do the Lobo deep dive, so you missed that if you need that. I will be back next week. I don't have a topic in mind yet, so if there's something you guys want to know about, reach out and let me know. Otherwise, we'll see what the news brings up. And that's it, folks. I hope you've all had a great weekend. I hope you're going to have a great week. Stay out of the snow if you're being frozen in or whatever, the bomb cyclone stuff. Or if you're on the West Coast, stay out of the heat. It's been a little warm the last few days. So good to see you, Ed, Kat, Mr. Nope, Thomas, everybody else. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great week. I will see you next Sunday. And yes, I will be here even though it's Super Bowl Sunday. So if you're not a football fan, I'm your alternative. 4 o'clock Pacific, 7 o'clock Eastern, right here, wherever this is. See you guys later.